This is Goku-san DBZ. Welcome back for a new top 10 list. It's been a while since I've done one of these. So with that said, I thought I'd look at 10 of my personal favorite games from a publisher that gets a whole lot of hate. Almost equally as much as Electronic Arts and Activision Blizzard. Though I definitely on some perspectives, yeah, they're not a great company. But at least in the area of games and stuff, I'll admit I have a little bit more fondness of this publisher than many people out there maybe nowadays, because I knew Mirror first playing games from this company back in the 90s. Back when they were virtually very much a smaller company or publisher here in the States, based out of France. This is 10 lists looking at 10 of my personal favorite games from Ubisoft. So with that said, first up, two digital games I want to do an honorable mention. The first of which, more of an indie style game, very unique style and stuff, and refreshing, called Child of Light, which is a very interesting game, and I don't think half bad. Also, I have to give an honorable mention to a certain actually tactical RPG crossover between Rabbids and Mario. Yes, but also, I want to give honorable mentions to the original Watch Dogs. I actually think it's actually a halfway decent game, in all honesty. Now, you're probably best off if you're going to play a game, I would recommend probably playing it on PS4. But still, boy, is it not too bad. But yeah, I think this game gets a little too much hate. Also, of a bit more unique racing style games that Ubisoft produced I actually enjoy. Rayman Arena, which is a interesting style Rayman racing game of sorts. It's definitely not your typical type racing game. It's like a cross between racing and platformer in one. It's a very unique hybrid style compared to many other games of the time period. And admittedly, I have a bias as I love the Rayman series. Also, honorable mentions. Assassin's Creed Unity, another game I think it gets way more hate than it deserves. Though, to be fair, when it first came out, there was a whole heck of a lot of bad bugs and issues definitely with the game overall. But still, I think for today's standard, I consider Unity in the top 5 best Assassin's Creed games. Personal perspective. Also, last honorable mention, the Assassin's Creed 2 series of games. Great games, don't get me wrong. My personal favorite is probably the second of the trilogy of games, in all honesty. But that's just my own personal perspective, regardless. So, with that said, what is currently my number 10, for the most part, favorite game made by Ubisoft? It's from a franchise, as I already just said, that I love, but I love the game itself. It's a lot of fun, personally. And that is Rayman 3. This game actually deserves, I think, a lot more love than it actually gets. Just my perspective, though. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, it is a lot of fun to play. And that is the key, especially when it comes to platforming. You need to have your platforming actually be fun. It is kind of weird, though. They definitely went in a little bit more heavy on the combat and stuff in this specific Rayman game over other previous ones. Still great and one of the best Rayman games in my personal opinion. Number 9 is probably going to be a somewhat controversial pick, and I'm fine with that. For me, coming in at number 9 is Immortals Phoenix Rising. Keep in mind, I am a big uber fan of course, history as well as mythology, and surprisingly, they did a halfway decent job, I actually think, with the Greek mythology and stuff, the world overall. Yes, there's definitely a lot of stuff in it that kind of reminds me of other games I've already played, but still, I actually think the combat's pretty fun, and I definitely love how bright and colorful the world is. I actually thought, frankly, for me, this game was a bit of a surprise. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it more. I had much lower expectations than probably may some people out there. But for me, I think Immortals Phoenix Rising is actually quite a bit of fun. Number 8. Maybe somewhat controversial. I'm sure a lot of people probably have this higher up for them personally. But for me, coming at number 8, favorite game from Ubisoft goes to Beyond Good and Evil. Definitely an all time cult classic. More or less, it's an action or third person action mixed with platforming. And to be fair, I actually think they did a really good job. And it's interesting over the years how this game has actually become very highly regarded by many people out there. And it's also kind of crazy how much like the game is on GameCube and stuff now. For me, I'm glad I went with the Xbox version of the game because I think overall the performance is a little bit better. But to be fair, most multi platform games from the 6th gen tend to perform better on the original Xbox because of the hard drive and having much stronger overall processing power. Definitely gave the Xbox a little edge in that domain. But still, yeah, for me, at 8 is Beyond Good and Evil. Next, coming in at number 7 is definitely a great modern game using the classic elements and classic platforming of the past, and I actually appreciate the fact Ubisoft decided to go back in time with a series of technically two games they've done, but for me, I prefer this one over the other two. For me, coming at number 7 is Rayman Legends. I know Rayman Origins is good, don't get me wrong, but for me, Rayman Legends I just enjoy more as I have Rayman Legends on the Wii U, I have Rayman Legends also on the Switch, as well as the PS4 and the Xbox One. So if that says how much I like Rayman Legends, I don't know what else does. But for me, of modern day platformers, I think this is easily one of the best platformers to come out in definitely the last decade or a little more, at least for me personally. Arguably, I have a real heavy nostalgia and fondness for the Rayman series as a whole, though. For me, next, coming at number 6. At 6 is one with a very heavy nostalgia attachment, as it would be my very first ever Rayman game. And of course, that is Rayman on the PS1. It is insanely hard. I will argue it is, in personal perspective, top 10 hardest games of all time that I have personally played. I would easily put in my top 10 hardest games ever. But with that said, still overall, it doesn't change the fact I do have a real fondness. And this was a game that actually made me actually interested in playing more better challenging platformer games over the years. And that's one thing I will say. If you don't have a huge amount of experience with classic era platformers of the 4th and 5th console generations, trust me, this game will destroy you. Speaking from much experience, it was one of the few, like, I would say, top hard games that I actually pushed myself to go through all the punishment and stuff just to beat the game. And the satisfaction of when you finally actually beat it is a lot better just because of the amount of challenge you have in this game overall. But with that said, let's change the music now, shall we? Next, coming in at number 5 is actually a tie between two games that I love equally for different reasons. The first of the two tied at number 5 is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. With amazing ship battles, naval battles are great, superb, and in my opinion, frankly, well, if you haven't played Black Flag, I do highly recommend do it, as it is very affordable and definitely more than worth your time. The other one tied at number 5 for me personally is Assassin's Creed Rogue. It is in my top 3 favorite Assassin's Creeds of all time. So now you've seen two of my top 3 favorite AC games of all time, tied at number 5 between, because I think Rogue did some very unique and interesting stuff. Plus the fact, a brief bit, you're actually in Ireland, which I love the fact. Well, being half Irish, yeah. But with that said, still, it was interesting. Just the story and everything in general. I think it's really cool in Rogue. But with that said, you can't beat Black Flag is also a great swashbuckling time. Coming at number 4, it's definitely going to be probably one of the more divisive or unknown to most general audiences. Outside of RPG fans, definitely the 7th generation. But for me, coming at number 4 is a great tactical RPG. All around, I think the soundtrack is great. I actually, yes, I will admit, there's definitely a lot of archetypes and definitely run of the mill elements in it, but I actually enjoy most of the voice cast as they use a predominantly very well known English dub cast that does a lot of anime. You will definitely, if you watch even a decent amount of Funimation shows and stuff, animes, you're definitely going to recognize at least probably 60 to 70% of the voice cast in this game. But it's a great, fun game. The music is great. The fact you can create up to like around 120 golems to have, and yeah, it is actually a tactical RPG. Enchanted Arms is a lot of fun though, and I do highly recommend, honestly, this game to other people that actually enjoy immersive, like really nice worlds, and definitely a variety of different style characters and everything throughout definitely time. I just feel this game is criminally underrated, and I think it deserves way more love than it gets. And I do recommend more people check out Enchanted Arms seriously. Next, coming in at number 3, at least for me personally, and that is a little game called Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Comes in at number 3. Definitely has a heavy nostalgia for me as it was my first Prince of Persia game I would ever actually beat, as well as the first one I would ever actually own as well. Though I have played other Prince of Persia games, like I've said before, I actually think Prince of Persia 2008, sort of a reimagining, is actually pretty good. I'm looking forward to the new upcoming Prince of Persia game, finally a new one in the classic control scheme and everything, but for me, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remains the gold standard of the franchise, and arguably the best, and remains one of, I think, the best action platformers, definitely of the 2000s. Hands down. If you haven't tried it, I do highly recommend it. Coming in at number 2, this will always be pretty much one of my favorites, but yeah, my second favorite game from Ubisoft. This was my number 1 favorite Assassin's Creed game of all time. Coming at number 2 is Assassin's Creed 3. As I've said before, I love this game, I always will. I don't think it will ever be surpassed as my number 1 favorite Assassin's Creed game, and for quite a long time, it was my personal favorite Ubisoft game. But in more recent years, when I finally got a chance to finally do a full playthrough, a couple of times now, for me, my number 1 favorite game from Ubisoft should be no surprise, as my love for platforming, and especially I have a deep love for 3D platformers. For me, coming at number 1 favorite Ubisoft game, Rayman 2 for the Dreamcast. Specifically, is the best way to play, as there's a lot of cut stuff in the other versions that were released like on PS1 and everything, because it could not run the amount of data and stuff that the obviously Dreamcast could run, as it was pretty much almost neck and neck with the PS2 overall power wise. But for me, Rayman 2 on the Dreamcast remains the definitive way to play Rayman 2, and it still remains, in my opinion, the best Rayman game of all time and the best Ubisoft game of all time. But with that said, leave a comment, tell me what your perspective is on Ubisoft. With that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel, and stay safe out there.